Welcome to Exon Academy. Today we're diving into the Cambridge O Level Environmental Management Syllabus. This subject is a fascinating blend of science, geography, and economics that explores how natural systems work, how humans affect them, and how we can make sustainable choices for the future. We'll cover all 9 chapters in this video, breaking them into bite sized sections with real world examples to help you understand and remember the material. Whether you're preparing for exams or just curious about the environment, this guide will help you succeed. Let's begin. Chapter number 1.1, The Rock Cycle. The rock cycle is nature's way of recycling rocks over millions of years. Beginning with weathering and erosion, rocks break down into sediments due to water, wind, or temperature changes. Then comes in compression. These sediments compact over time to form sedimentary rocks, like sandstone. Then comes in heat and pressure, where sedimentary rocks transform into metamorphic rocks, such as marble or slate. Then comes in melting and cooling. Rocks melt into magma, and cooling forms igneous rocks like granite. For instance, a river carrying sediments eventually deposits them in a lake bed, forming sedimentary rocks over time. This cycle never stops, reshaping Earth's surface constantly. Chapter number 1.2, Types of Rocks. Rocks are classified into 3 main types. Igneous rocks. They form when magma cools. Granite is a coarse-grained, durable rock often found in buildings. Basalt is fine-grained and dark, and is found in volcanic regions. Number 2. Sedimentary rocks, created from compressed layers of sediments. Limestone, rich in calcium carbonate, is used in cement, while sandstone forms from sand grains. Number 3. Metamorphic rocks. Heat and pressure change existing rocks into new forms. Marble, derived from limestone, is prized for sculptures, while slate is commonly used for roofing. Understanding rock types helps us study Earth's history and its resources. Chapter number 1.3, Extractions of Rocks and Minerals. Extracting rocks and minerals is essential for modern life but poses environmental challenges. Methods of extraction. Surface mining, like open pit mining, removes large areas of soil and rock, whereas subsurface mining, like shaft mining, digs deep underground to access resources like gold. Factors that influence extractions are geology, the location and depth of resources, and then comes accessibility, how easily the area can be mined. And market demand and environmental concerns also play key roles. For example, coal mining in the Appalachians has powered industries but also caused deforestation and habitat loss. Chapter number 1.4, Impacts of Extraction. Mining brings both benefits and challenges. The positive impacts that it has is that it creates jobs, boosts local economies, and supports infrastructure development. The negative impacts are of habitat destruction, water and air pollution, and waste management challenges are major concerns. For instance, open cast coal mining in India supports energy needs but displaces local communities and wildlife. Chapter number 2.1, Fossil Fuels. Fossil fuels power our modern world but come at a cost. Fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas are formed millions of years ago from decayed plants and animals compressed under heat and pressure. Their advantages are that they provide reliable energy and power industries worldwide. Their disadvantages are burning fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases, leading to climate change. Note that they are also finite resources. For example, coal-fired power plants generate electricity for millions, but they, however, do also emit large amounts of carbon dioxide. Chapter number 2.2, Renewable Energy Sources. Renewable energy is vital for a sustainable future. Here are some popular sources. Solar power harnesses sunlight using photovoltaic cells. It's clean but depends on sunny weather. Whereas wind power depends on wind. Wind turbines generate electricity efficiently in regions like the Netherlands. Whereas hydropower depends on water. Dams like the Three Gorges Dam in China generate power by harnessing river flow. While renewable energy reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it however does require high initial investments and advanced infrastructure. Chapter number 2.3, Energy Conservation. Conserving energy is as important as finding new sources. Here are some popular methods through which we can conserve energy. We can use energy efficient appliances like LED bulbs that consume less electricity. We can properly insulate buildings, which will reduce heating and cooling costs, and in the transportation, and we can use public transport and electric vehicles that minimize fossil fuel use. For example, Japan encourages energy saving technologies through strict regulations and incentives. Moving on to chapter number 3.1, Types of Agriculture. Agriculture is essential for providing food, but it varies based on scale and purpose. There are three types of farming in our syllabus: subsistence farming, small scale, self sufficient farming aimed at feeding a family or a community. It's common in rural parts of Africa and Asia. Then comes commercial farming, large scale operations focused on profit, like wheat farms in the USA or tea plantations in India. Then comes mixed farming, where growing crops and raising livestock is combined, providing diversity and reducing risks. For example, a farmer in Europe might grow grains while raising cattle, ensuring income even if one sector underperforms. Chapter number 3.2, Increasing Agricultural Yields. Farmers use various techniques to increase crop yields and meet food demands. Number 1, fertilizers, chemical or organic compounds that replenish soil nutrients. An example of this are nitrogen-based fertilizers, which are widely used for wheat and maize. Number 2 is irrigation. It provides water during dry season. Drip irrigation is very popular worldwide and conserves water efficiently. Number 3 are GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They are basically crops genetically modified to resist pests or survive droughts. For instance, BT cotton is engineered to resist pests. Number 4 is mechanization. Tractors, seed drills, and combine harvesters make farming faster and less labor intensive. These techniques have transformed agriculture, but the overuse of fertilizers or irrigation can harm the environment. Chapter number 3.3, Environmental Impacts of Agriculture. While agriculture feeds the world, it also affects the environment. Here are three major impacts. Number 1, soil erosion. Overgrazing and intensive farming strip the topsoil, reducing fertility. Then comes water pollution. Excess fertilizers and pesticides seep into rivers and lakes, causing algal blooms that harm aquatic life. And then comes arguably the most major one, deforestation. Clearing forests for farmland destroys habitats and contributes to carbon emissions. For instance, the Amazon rainforest has been significantly deforested for cattle ranching and soybean farming. Chapter number 3.4, Sustainable Agricultural Practices. To balance food production with environmental health, farmers adopt sustainable methods. Number 1, crop rotation. Alternating crops such as legumes and cereals prevents soil exhaustion. Number 2 is organic farming, which avoids synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, focusing on natural inputs like compost. Then comes agroforestry. Growing crops alongside trees provides shade, prevents soil erosion, and supports biodiversity. These practices reduce agriculture's environmental impact and ensures long-term productivity. Now comes the most moist chapter. Chapter number 4.1, The Water Cycle. Water moves through the environment in a continuous cycle. It begins with evaporation. Water from oceans, rivers, and lakes turns into vapor. Then comes condensation. Water vapor cools to form clouds. And then it precipitates. Water falls as rain, snow, or hail. Then the water is infiltrated into the soil. Rainwater soaks into the ground, replenishing aquifers. While water is renewable, it is unevenly distributed, leading to scarcity in some regions like the Middle East. Chapter number 4.2, Water Usage and Challenges. Water is used for various purposes. Firstly, it has its domestic use, drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Then comes agricultural use, where irrigation accounts for the largest water consumption globally. Then comes industrial use, where it is used for cooling machinery and generating power in factories. The challenges it faces is scarcity. Countries like Jordan face severe water shortages. Pollution. Industrial waste and agricultural runoff contaminate freshwater sources. And then comes uneven access. Millions in sub-Saharan Africa lack clean drinking water. Chapter number 4.3, Managing Water Resources. To address water issues, governments and organizations implement these solutions. They build dams and reservoirs. Multi-purpose projects like the Hoover Dam in the USA stores water, generates electricity, and prevents floods. which desalinization basically does is that it provides drinking water from seawater. Then comes conservation. Obviously, simple measures like fixing leaks, using water efficient appliances, and public awareness campaigns reduce water wastage. Efficient water management ensures that this vital resource is available for everyone in the future. Alright, turns out there is an even better chapter, and that is chapter 5.1, Oceans as a Resource. Oceans are an invaluable resource covering 71% of the Earth's surface, supporting life and economies globally. Ocean provides fish and seafood, which are staple diets for billions. Japan's economy heavily depends on fishing industries. It also contributes to energy. They house offshore oil and gas reserves and enable renewable energy sources like tidal power. Scotland uses A major user of tidal power is Scotland, which uses tidal turbines to generate electricity. Then comes transport. Shipping routes across oceans facilitate global trade. The Panama Canal reduces transit time for ships traveling between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Oceans are not just vast bodies of water, but lifelines for global resources and transportation. Chapter number 5.2, Overfishing and its Impacts. Overfishing is a significant issue where fish are caught faster than they can reproduce, leading to population declines. Number 1 is the loss of biodiversity. Species like Atlantic cod have faced dramatic declines due to overfishing. Number 2 are economic impacts. Communities dependent on fishing face job losses and food shortages. For example, in the 1990s, Canada's cod fishing industry collapsed due to overfishing, destroying local economies. To sustain marine life and livelihoods, it's crucial to address overfishing with effective management strategies. Chapter number 5.3, Marine Pollution. Marine pollution is a growing environmental threat. Number 1 is plastic pollution. Millions of tons of plastic waste end up in the ocean annually, harming marine animals that ingest or become entangled in it. For example, sea turtles mistake plastic bags for jellyfish. Number 2 is oil spills. Large scale spills like the Deepwater Horizon incident coat marine habitats, suffocating wildlife and contaminating water. Number 3 is chemical runoff. Fertilizers and pesticides from farms create dead zones where where oxygen levels are too low to support marine life. An example of this is the Gulf of Mexico, which experiences one of the largest dead zones due to agricultural runoff. Tackling pollution is essential for maintaining healthy oceans. Chapter number 5.4, Managing Fisheries Sustainably. Managing fisheries sustainably ensures the long term health of marine resources. Here are three strategies which can be used to manage fisheries sustainably. Fishing quotas. Governments set limits on the number of fish that can be caught to prevent overfishing. An example of this is the European Union's Common Fisheries Policy, which establishes quotas for member states. Number 2 is marine reserves, protected areas where fishing is restricted or banned, which allows ecosystems to recover. An example of this is the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, which protects coral reefs and associated species. Number 3 is aquaculture. Fish farming provides an alternative to wild fishing, reducing pressure on natural populations. An example of this is Norway. Norway is a global leader in sustainable salmon fishing. These strategies balance human needs with ecological health, ensuring oceans can support future generations. Chapter number 6.1, Types of Natural Hazards. Natural hazards pose risks to life and infrastructure. They are classified into number 1, geophysical hazards. They result from geological activity, which include earthquakes and volcanoes. Earthquakes are caused by tectonic plate movements. An example of an infamous earthquake was the 2010 Haiti earthquake, which caused widespread destruction. Volcanoes are eruptions that release lava and ash, threatening nearby communities. An example of this is Mount Vesuvius in Italy. Number 2 are climatic hazards related to weather and climate. They include floods, droughts, and cyclones. Floods are triggered by heavy rainfall or dam failures. Droughts are basically prolonged lack of rainfall periods which cause water shortages. And cyclones are strong winds and rainstorms, such as Hurricane Katrina in the USA. And then comes finally, biological hazards, which include outbreaks of diseases like malaria or pandemics like the COVID-19 pandemic. Each hazard has unique impacts requiring specific management strategies. Chapter number 6.2, Managing Natural Hazards. Effective management minimizes the damage caused by natural hazards. Number 1 is preparedness. Early warning systems predict hazards and allow timely evacuations. And public education ensures communities know how to respond during emergencies. Number 2 is mitigation. Building codes ensure structures can withstand hazards, like earthquake resistant buildings in Japan. Then, sustainable land use planning avoids construction in high risk areas such as floodplains. Number 3, response. Emergency aid provides immediate relief such as food and shelter, and evacuation plans save lives during disasters. For instance, Bangladesh's cyclone shelters have significantly reduced fatalities during storms. Chapter number 7.1, Structure of the Atmosphere. The atmosphere is a protective layer of gases surrounding Earth, divided into five key layers. Number 1, the troposphere. The troposphere is the closest to the Earth's surface and where all weather phenomena occur, such as clouds and storms. It extends up to 10 to 15 kilometers. Then comes the stratosphere, which houses the ozone layer, which absorbs harmful UV radiation from the sun. Jets often fly in this stable layer. Then comes the mesosphere, the coldest layer, where temperatures drop as low as negative 90 degrees Celsius. This is where meteors burn up. Number 4 is the thermosphere. This is where temperatures rise significantly, and this is where auroras occur. It also contains the ionosphere, important for radio communication. And then finally comes the exosphere, the outermost layer, where the atmosphere gradually merges into space. These layers work together to protect Earth and sustain life, making the atmosphere an essential component of our planet. Chapter number 7.2, The Greenhouse Effect. The greenhouse effect is a natural process that keeps Earth warm enough to support life. There are two types of greenhouse effects. The first is the natural greenhouse effect. The greenhouse gases like CO2, methane, and water vapor trap heat radiated from Earth's surface. Number 2 is the enhanced greenhouse effect. Human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation increase greenhouse gas concentrations, leading to global warming. Human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation increase greenhouse gas concentrations, leading to global warming. For example, increased CO2 from industrial emissions has raised global temperatures, causing ice caps to melt and sea levels to rise, causing floods. Chapter number 7.3, Air Pollution and its Effects. Air pollution is a critical issue affecting both humans and the environment. Its causes are vehicle emissions, which release nitrogen oxides and particulates, industrial activities, where factories emit pollutants like sulfur dioxide, and fossil fuel combustion. Power plants and homes burning coal or oil release greenhouse gases, and its effects are of smog formation, acid rain, and its health impacts. Smog formation. Smog is basically a mixture of pollutants which forms haze over cities, reducing air quality. Acid rain is sulfur and nitrogen compounds mixed with rain, harming crops, forests, and aquatic ecosystems. Prolonged exposure to air pollution causes asthma, bronchitis, and other respiratory diseases. For instance, cities like Delhi and Beijing frequently experience smog due to high pollution levels. Chapter number 7.4, How to Reduce Air Pollution. Reducing air pollution requires coordinated efforts across various sectors. Here are three popular strategies. Number 1 is cleaner energy sources. Transitioning to renewable energy like solar and wind reduces reliance on fossil fuels. Electric vehicles help cut down transportation emissions. Regulations. Governments enforce emission limits and require industries to use scrubbers to filter pollutants before they are released into the air. Then comes reforestation. Planting trees increases CO2 absorption, helping combat the enhanced greenhouse effect. For example, countries like Norway are heavily investing in renewable energy, while cities like Copenhagen promote cycling to reduce vehicle emissions. Chapter number 7.5, Global Warming and Climate Change. Global warming driven by increased greenhouse gas emissions has far-reaching impacts. Burning fossil fuels release CO2. Deforestation reduces the numbers of trees that absorb CO2, which are major causes of global warming. Its impacts are melting ice caps and extreme weather. Melting ice caps causes sea levels to rise, threatening coastal cities. Its solutions are international efforts like the Paris Agreement, which aim to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above which aim to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Renewable energy conservation and reforestation are key strategies to mitigate climate change. For instance, the Netherlands has implemented flood management systems to adapt to rising sea levels, while Costa Rica has reforested large areas to offset carbon emissions. Chapter 8.1, Factors Influencing Population Growth. Population growth depends on three main factors. Number 1, the birth rate, the number of live births per 1,000 people annually. High birth rates are common in LEDCs, which are less economically developed countries, due to limited access to contraception and cultural preferences for larger families. Number 2 is the death rate, the number of deaths per 1,000 people annually. MEDCs, more economically developed countries often have lower death rates due to better healthcare and nutrition. Number 3 is migration. Migration is the movement of people between regions which affect local populations. An example of this is refugees fleeing war-torn areas which increase populations in neighboring countries. Population change is calculated as natural increase equals to birth rate minus death rate. For instance, a high birth rate in Nigeria drives rapid population growth, while Japan faces population decline due to a low birth rate and an aging population. Chapter number 8.2, Population Distribution and Density. Population distribution refers to where people live around the world, which is often uneven. The key term of this chapter is population density. It is measured as the number of people per square kilometer. An example of this are urban areas like Tokyo, which have high population densities, while deserts like the Sahara are sparsely populated. The factors affecting distribution are climate. Favorable climates like those in temperate regions support higher populations. Resources. Access to water and fertile land attracts settlements such as the Nile River Valley. And economy. Industrialized areas with job opportunities attract more people. For instance, urbanization has concentrated populations in megacities like Mumbai, while extreme environments like Antarctica remain largely uninhabited. Chapter 8.3, Problems of Overpopulation. Overpopulation occurs when the number of people exceeds the resources available to sustain them, causing number 1, resource depletion. Overuse of food, water, and energy leads to shortages. An example of this is India, where groundwater overuse has led to severe water scarcity. Number 2, environmental degradation. Increased pollution, deforestation, and habitat loss occur as people exploit natural resources. An example of this is the Amazon rainforest, which is being cleared for agriculture to meet growing food demands. Number 3 is unemployment and poverty. In densely populated areas, job availability can't keep up, increasing poverty levels. Efforts to control population growth are critical to addressing these issues. Chapter number 8.4, Problems of Underpopulation. Underpopulation is where there are fewer people than required to utilize resources effectively, which creates unique challenges. Number 1 is labor shortages. Industries face a lack of workers, slowing economic growth. Although Japan is very densely populated, Japan's aging population is leading to worker shortages, especially in healthcare and manufacturing. Number 2, economic decline. Reduced productivity and consumer spending harm the economy. Number 3 is aging population. An increasing number of elderly depend on a shrinking workforce, leading to higher healthcare and pension costs to the government. Countries like Germany and Singapore offer incentives, such as tax benefits and family support programs to ensure higher birth rates. Chapter number 8.5, Population Policies. Governments implement population policies to manage growth and balance resources. Number 1 is pro-natalist policies, which encourage larger families to combat underpopulation. Example of this is France, which offers financial incentives and parental leaves to families with more children. And then comes anti-natalist policies, which reduce birth rates in overpopulated areas. An example of this is China's one-child policy, which controlled rapid population growth but led to an aging population and gender imbalance. Number 3 is education and family planning. In LEDCs, educating women and increasing access to contraception have effectively reduced population growth. An example of this is Bangladesh, where family planning programs have successfully lowered the birth rate. Population policies play a vital role in ensuring sustainable development. Chapter number 8.6, Urbanization and its Effects. Urbanization is the movement of people from rural areas to cities, driven by the search for better opportunities. Its positive effects are that cities provide more jobs, better healthcare, and education. An example of this is South Korea. Urbanization contributed to rapid economic development. Its negative effects are that rapid urbanization often leads to overcrowded slums, inadequate housing, and poor sanitation. Traffic congestion and air pollution are also common in megacities like Delhi. Urban planning and sustainable practices are crucial to address the challenges of urbanization while leveraging its benefits. Chapter number 9.1, Components of an Ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community of living and non living components that interact with each other to sustain life. Number 1, Biotic components. These include all living organisms, producers that create energy through photosynthesis, consumers, which include herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores, which depend on plants or other animals for energy, and then decomposers, bacteria and fungi, which break down dead organisms, recycling nutrients to the soil. And then comes abiotic components. These are the non living factors that support life. Number 1 is light, which drives photosynthesis, water, which is essential for all life processes, and soil, which provides nutrients and anchor plants. For example, in a forest ecosystem, sunlight, which is abiotic, help trees, which are biotic, grow, while decomposers recycle fallen leaves into nutrients for the soil. Chapter number 9.2, Energy Flow in Ecosystems. Energy in an ecosystem flows from the sun through a series of trophic levels. Number 1 is producers. Plants and algae use sunlight to produce energy through photosynthesis. Number 2 are the primary consumers. Herbivores eat plants, transferring energy. An example of this is a deer eating grass. Then comes secondary consumers. Carnivores eat herbivores. An example of this is a wolf eating the deer who ate grass. And then comes tertiary consumers, which are top predators that feed on secondary consumers. At each trophic level, 90% of the energy is lost as heat, leaving only 10% for the next level. This limits the number of trophic levels in an ecosystem. Chapter number 9.3, Nutrient Cycles. The carbon cycle. The carbon cycle moves carbon between the atmosphere, organisms, and the earth. Number 1, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is basically plants absorbing CO2 to produce energy and release oxygen. Respiration. Animals and plants release CO2 back into the atmosphere as they break down food for energy. And then comes combustion. Burning fossil fuels releases stored carbon into the atmosphere. And then, finally, decomposition. Dead organisms break down, returning carbon to the soil and air. For example, trees act as carbon sinks, but deforestation and burning fossil fuels increase atmospheric CO2, contributing to global warming. Chapter number 9.4, Threats to Ecosystems. Ecosystems face significant threats due to human activities. Number 1, Habitat destruction. Forests and wetlands are cleared for agriculture, housing, or infrastructure. An example of this is again the Amazon rainforest, which is rapidly shrinking due to deforestation for cattle ranching. Number 2 is pollution. Plastics in the ocean harm marine life, while agricultural chemicals contaminate soil and water. Number 3 is overexploitation. Overfishing and hunting disrupt food chains, leading to population imbalances. An example of this is the extinction of certain predator species which cause prey populations to overgrow, damaging ecosystems. Chapter number 9.5, Conservation of Ecosystems. Protecting ecosystems is vital for maintaining biodiversity and ecosystem services. Here are some strategies. Number 1, protected areas. National parks and reserves protect habitats from exploitation. An example of this is the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania, which conserves diverse wildlife. Number 2, sustainable practices. The first sustainable practice is ecotourism, which encourages tourism that funds conservation while minimizing environmental impact. And then comes reforestation, which is basically planting trees to restore degraded habitats. Number 3, and arguably the most important, is education and awareness, which is spreading knowledge about the importance of ecosystems, which helps build public support for conservation. For instance, Costa Rica has successfully combined ecotourism and reforestation to protect its rainforests while boosting its economy. Chapter number 9.6, Balancing Development and Conservation. Balancing development and conservation is essential for sustainable growth. Its challenges include development projects, like building roads or factories, which often damage ecosystems by prioritizing short term profits. Its solution includes environmental impact assessments (EIAs), which evaluate potential damage before approving development projects. Another possible solution is renewable resource use. Sustainable fishing quotas or selective logging ensures ecosystems can replenish over time. For example, sustainable forestry in Finland provides timber while maintaining forest biodiversity and health. This balance is key to ensuring future generations inherit a thriving planet. Remember that natural ecosystems are the foundation of life on Earth, supporting biodiversity, providing resources, and regulating environmental systems. As we've seen throughout this ch- as we've seen throughout this video, human activities pose threats, but with sustainable practices and conservation efforts, we can protect these vital systems. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Cambridge O Levels Environmental Management Syllabus. Together, let's use this knowledge not just for exams, but to shape a better future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts or questions in the comments. See you in the next video. And as always, good luck for your exams.